What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. That intro song, we changed the intro song. It was originally a techno song, but we're like 30 episodes in, so we figured you're sick of hearing the same song. So all the music for the podcast, as you guys know, it's my music project called Theory 6. Now it's a metal song, so I figured I'd switch it up a little bit so you don't get sick of hearing the same techno-y trance type song. But today we got Tabetha Wallace. Most people might know her from Buzzsaw. She was there with Sean Stone and Tyrel Ventura. It was an online show. They did news. I believe they had 1 or 2 episodes a week. I think Sean did some interviews too on once a week, and really awesome show. And I think now you're moving on to other projects, but now she's moving on to this project called Build, which she just not so long ago was on Breaking the Set with Abby Martins talking about, and she's using IndieGoGo, which is similar to Kickstarter, I'm assuming, and a really interesting project for me. For most of my listeners, they probably know that I have a family-owned construction company. That's my full-time job, so I know a little bit about the construction industry and the reckless spending, and I, like me and Tabetha were just talking about, it's probably not the sexiest of topics, but you look at the hours and hours you waste of your life in traffic, and then you look at the hours of your life you waste swearing, just because you hit a pothole, and just you look at it, how many of us can honestly say we know more than 1 or 2 streets that are well paved and are a good street that you don't have to swerve around potholes or drive slow? So I think it's a topic. And then also the bridges. I mean, obviously the bridges are a big deal because, I think most of them are running traffic over its capacity. I think it was like 1 out of 4 cars or bridges, need to be repaired or whatever. So Tabetha will talk a little bit more about that. So just real quick, just want to thank Tabetha for being with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about Build and all these good things.
Yeah. So for people who don't know about your Build project, just a quick, highlight some of the things that issues and topics you're hitting on.
Well, my history was, as you said, I used to co-host the show Buzzsaw, which was on the Lit TV and continues on. Sean Stone is still doing interviews, and we used to it was Tyrel Ventura and I did a weekly news roundup where we kind of went through all of these sort of nutty things that happen in the news that people aren't talking about, and really getting down into the nitty gritty and finding out what the real conversation was and the stories that no one's talking about. And it was so much fun, and it was so rewarding to be able to do something like that. I've worked in news before, but I worked in print journalism for a while, and then I sort of worked in the entertainment business, which is, marketing and everything else. So being able to really have a real conversation and a dialogue about it was a really amazing experience. And we have other projects going on in the same vein. We just aren't doing the news for them anymore. But stay tuned, because you never know where we might show up next.
When you say we, you mean you and Tyrel, or you and...
The 3 of us.
Oh, the 3 of you guys? Yeah.
More projects together, so stay tuned, because you never, like I said, you never know. I get a lot of messages saying, like, where are you? What happened? And when are you coming back? And we're working on it. Yeah,
so not all feedback online is just evil and controls you. That's good. That's good to hear some positive feedback.
Some of it is just, it can be really frustrating because, people take a lot of things very personally, and I completely understand. And I feel terrible that the show our part of the show, the news, ended so abruptly. But like I said, that wasn't us. It's just things happen, and we are continuing to do the work we do and looking for new outlets and all of that. So it's always really, really hard to deal with the online community sometimes, because people are very aggressive and they don't listen when you try to explain things. Yeah. And some people, it's the same as the mainstream media. They're just parroting what the mainstream media tells you, which is, just scream and yell and don't listen. So
yeah, it's not a dialogue. It's not, actually trying to listen to each other's points, and it's not a real conversation. The thing about the internet is that anytime you put yourself online, you have to be ready for some feedback, some negative feedback. And it's just like, it's like there's a quote that says, I'd rather be or playing the game and being criticized than in the crowd watching criticizing, so it's one of those things. I'd rather be, I think we all kind of agree with that. I remember I started playing music at a young age, and me and my brother had like a metal band growing up with some friends. And I remember we played a show once, and it seemed like everybody really loved the show. But this one kid, this was when like MySpace was still popular, and this one kid wrote like this book of how crappy our band was, and like just literally like put like a lot of time and effort into like letting me know all the things he hated about our band. And I'm like, I keep thinking about the show. I'm like, where was this kid? Because I don't remember seeing anybody that looked like they were that. But it was just like, it was hilarious because it was like the first like my first experience with like somebody giving me negative feedback, and I'm just like, well, hey, if you wrote me, I guess at least you won't forget us. The way I look at it is that at least we're in the conversation, and if somebody takes that much time to give you some negative feedback, then at least somebody's watching, or so it's just something that I learned that you kind of have to just deal with. And I'm sure you probably learned that too, doing Buzzsaw. And
it did. It was. I knew it was gonna happen, and you sort of deal with it, and you have to. You have these bloggers who also, like people making like these huge, assumptions about things, and it's like this one guy wrote like 3 blog posts, which involved a lot of Bible quotes and things like that about me and the show and all of this stuff. And I'm like, if you don't like the show and you patently disagree with everything we say, why are you watching every week?
Yeah.
If you think I'm full of it, then don't watch. Nobody's forcing you. That's the whole freedom of speech thing.
Yeah, but that tells you the type of people that write comments, because like if I don't like something, I just move on to the next video or watch the next thing. Like I don't take the time to like write. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing in service, because I'm like, what, if I dislike something, like even if I buy a product and it sucks, I'm like, I should really write a review that it sucks, because the fact that I'm saving somebody else from spending the money. But then I get so caught up in life, and I'm like, it's not a priority. It's like I really don't like to take the time to sit down and then write a little, just like I buy it, I'm like, oh, this sucks, I'll just move on to the next thing. And it's just like, to me, it's just I just don't take it too personally, because I feel like the people who are actually taking time to write it, they're probably bored, or just like there's some internal hatred and some personal issues, and then they're just taking it out somewhere else. That's kind of the way I look at it. Exactly.
And the thing that's frustrating is being sort of in the public eye. People think that, well, you asked for this, and you can't say, hey guys, maybe let's have a conversation about it. And that's my whole thing. And there's always, with comments and with people, and it's the most important thing. And what it is with Build too is a dialogue. We're not talking about these things, and that's my biggest concern, is that instead of having a real conversation and having a real dialogue about an issue and saying, hey, I have information that you might find useful, and then I might learn something, and I might change my mind about something, I might expand my horizon. But if all you're going to do is say you're wrong and you're crazy, and you have to just remove those things from your life. But then people take it, there's been a lot of people in alternative news and even in mainstream media where when they say, look, I don't want this kind of element on my Facebook page, or, I'm going to take that out, then they get attacked for that too. And I mean,
well, nobody, I understand that if you're in the public eye, then you obviously, if you put stuff online, there's going to be criticism. But you're right. The thing is that, like, when people nitpick, like, changing your mind and stuff like that, I tell people all the time on this show, I'm about like 75% right with my facts, and I'm like, I'll get you in the ballpark. But the thing is, like, everybody has Google, so just Google it, and I'm like, I'll give you like the important little pieces, and then you can just figure out the rest. I'm like, I don't have time for that crap. I'll give you like a rough ballpark. And the thing is too, it's like your opinions are going to change. Like, that's how we progress as people. The type of person that is stuck, it made one decision that I believe in this ideology, or I'm a lefty or a righty, or I'm a conservative liberal. Usually they don't grow, and they're usually, you're picking a team instead of looking at all sides and all opinions and pick an idea. So that's kind of a dangerous way of looking at everything. I'm an atheist, and I've said this on the show numerous of times, like, but I'm not 100% sure I'm right. I'm like, I don't think there's a God. I'm not religious, but I could be wrong. What bothers me is when a religious person tells me that they know, and I'm like, nobody knows, so it just...
and actually I was raised Catholic, not strict or anything like that, but I went to 4 years of Catholic high school. I went to a Catholic college. I know my religion, trust me. I've taken 8 years of Catholic and religious training that you have to do when you go to schools like that. I know my Bible, and most of the time I'm like, I don't disrespect your beliefs, and I think that's that's the thing is, like you said, it's very, I made the analogy the other day. I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm a Packer fan because you have to be. It's like it's not, but it should be. I'm a Packer fan, but it's a bit like arguing about like the right or the left, and that's the most important part of the argument, that like you're a liberal or you're a conservative and you're this. It's akin to a Packer fan sitting there having this intense discussion about who would you rather beat in a game, the Minnesota Vikings or the Chicago Bears. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're arguing about something that is insignificant. Let's go in there and see who has the best ideas. Let's see who has, what we can bring to the table together. And with Build, the biggest part that I found in my first leg of the project, the first IndieGoGo, in that, in the research, is that every time you try to talk to an elected official, every time you try to talk to somebody who's involved in our infrastructure, they bring up politics, they bring up partisanship, they blame whatever is the other side from them, and we're not on, there's no sides. We all have to drive on these roads, we all have to go over these bridges. And in the news just this last week, there were, I think, at least two, maybe three instances where bridges were being closed because they were found to be structurally unsound. And one of those was, 90,000 people crossed a bridge, this bridge every day. And they suddenly went, oh yeah, no one should be on that bridge. And everything that comes out about it when you try to talk to people about that issue and about it, like, how does this happen? They blame, well, it was this politician who didn't want to pass this, and it was this person who kept us from doing this, and we weren't funded because of this. Instead of somebody taking responsibility for the fact that 90,000 people a day are driving over a piece of construction and a piece of road that could have killed them.
Yeah.
That's the thing that just boggles my mind. And you had said, you talked about me being on, when I was on Breaking the Set. 2 weeks later, after I'm on there, Obama came out and had gave a speech and gave a press conference about our crumbling infrastructure. And suddenly everybody's talking about it, about a report that came out months ago. And he's parroting everything practically. It was funny. It was almost word for word. I know he just took things off, not from me.
Sure he did. He copied you. Say it. He copied you.
Like, these statistics from the, from the engineers and literally said them. And I go, yeah, we've been talking about this for months and been asking questions, and none of the politicians will just give a straight answer. And the straight answer is, why are we driving on these horrible roads? Why is it okay? Where is all this money? If we have billions and billions and billions of dollars to throw at all these other projects and things, and defense and defense spending or anything, intelligence spending, I would rather see the money go first to the things that keep us safe, that give us clean water, that give us safe roads, that can get us from point A to point B. Because as I've said, it affects businesses and it affects the price of products. It affects everything in your life when these things aren't done well.
Well, and we all spend money on, you look at it like potholes. I've bent rims. I've popped tires. You end up having to drive slower to work. I mean, you look at Boston, for example. I'm from Massachusetts, and I moved here. I was born in Portugal, and then I came to Massachusetts, and I lived here most of my life. And, we're known for the Big Dig, which was the biggest fuck up in, construction history, and it's like being around other construction workers and in the construction industry, like we talk about how guys were just like, they were delivering materials to the job site, then they were just shipping them and nobody knows where they were going. And then obviously the state was paying for it. There was mass DOT inspectors that were getting paid off, construction workers that never showed up, and detail officers, state cops who never showed up, and they're just getting basically checks for showing up, and they never showed up. And it was just a giant mess. And it just, everybody made money off it. There was some deaths because of it. I know that a piece of concrete in a tunnel came down and killed somebody. There was arrests, there was fines, and it was one of the biggest screw ups ever. And it was just a giant waste of money. And I understand they need to fix Boston because it's a really old city, and a lot of those bridges and roads were designed when there wasn't as many cars, but we just the way we recklessly spend money. And the crazy part is we all know in Afghanistan and Iraq they have beautifully paved roads with our money. And being in construction, I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I don't give a shit. But like doing state projects, I've seen so much reckless spending. We did a project once where they had all this custom curb. This was a state project, so it was state money, and it was like all this custom curve for absolutely no reason. We had to do all these pavers. We did a huge parking lot in pavers. For people who don't know what pavers are, it's just those bricks, that people use for like patios in the backyard and stuff. But there's thicker ones you can use for cars driving on. And underneath those bricks, you had to put 6 inches of concrete. Then you put blacktop. Then you put pavers. You could have picked one of the three. We ended up doing all three, just to make it stable. I don't know what they were thinking. The designers are crazy. But we spent all this money, and then there was granite curb that went around this parking lot. But the granite curb was 18 inches, but it was completely in the ground. So all you saw was the top of it. So in other words, basically it was just an outside line of to separate the road and this parking lot. And all it was just a cosmetic thing. It was you're completely bearing granite curb just for a cosmetic look to see the top, which is flush with the road and the pavers. So it's complete waste of money. We're bearing granite curb, and this is taxpayers' money. And my argument is always, if a private company, if a Walmart or a Target or whatever, or a Sears wants to do something really fancy and spend money recklessly, that's great. Who gives a fuck? But when it's taxpayers' money, that's when it really bothers me, because it's like we're paying for this stuff, and then the worst part is every time they're broke, their way of fixing things is let's raise taxes. We don't have an income problem. We have a spending problem. Like you talked about, our military, if you list the top 10 military or our military spending and defense spending, we're number one. The next 9 doesn't add up to the U.S. And the next 9 includes countries like Russia and China. So just like, that's insane. And then I know you talked about on Breaking the Set how we got like a D rating for by the AS, whatever it is, the ASCE or whatever.
Society of Civil Engineers. Yeah.
It's
a mouthful.
Yeah.
It was a D. I mean, that's not okay. I don't understand how anybody could think that was okay. Like I said, your infrastructure includes everything. It's your drinking water. It's your waste disposal. It's, it's not just roads. It's where they go. It's how those things are done. And the fact is, we have a whole bunch of little infrastructure right now is so broken up. It's roads are one thing. This is one thing. This is another thing. It's all these little pieces, and they're all very kept apart, and they're kept separate from each other instead of working together, because those departments and the people who are building them don't want to. Because like you said, it's about contracts. It's about somebody getting a contract and saying, this is how much something's going to cost. And they figure out, like you said, here, let's put a fancy curb in, and let's do all that. And when you see things like these solar roadways, and you see these amazing, brilliant, innovative ways to use our roads and use our infrastructure better and more efficiently, and to solve other problems. And when somebody comes up with such a brilliant idea, and all we can do is complain about how much it's going to cost, I'm like, well, cost doesn't seem to be an issue when it's something you think is pretty, or your buddy, let's be real, your buddy is the guy who's going to get the contract.
Absolutely.
Then it's you could take half the money they waste and put it into something like solar lights and solar street lights. And I grew up in a very small town in Wisconsin, of about, I think, like 1,200 people when I was growing up there. And municipalities are really just this microcosm of the major problem of politics. And it's, you can't even fix a street light. I mean, it takes 6-7 months to fix a street light. And then when suddenly they do build something. Years ago, they finally put in a waste water treatment facility in my hometown, and we're connecting people to it. But certain people, when you live in the country, anybody who knows this, who lives not in an urban environment, a lot of people you have your own well, and you have your own septic system, and it's worked really well for a very long time. And what they do is they use that infrastructure to force people into using the infrastructure that they've put in that they don't need, that adds costs. And eventually what it is that you have to pay the city. It's about profits. It's not about people. And this is the problem that we see. It's become corporatocracy with everything. It's let's treat people like commodities. You're a piggy bank that I can shake loose when I think of something interesting and take your money. And I'd rather see my money spent, don't tell me we don't have money for fixing a pothole when you're buying $1 million Tomahawk missiles in bulk every year, when my taxpayer and all of your everybody out there, every one of your taxpayer dollars are going to buy equipment they don't even need. And that's my problem. It's not defense spending, it's how you're spending it on defense when we don't have money to fix things that are here. And then you wonder why. You have places like Detroit. That's why. Because the neighborhoods are crumbling, the roads are crumbling, and you're just sitting there going, well, it's your fault. It's because you live there.
Yeah.
It's not an answer. It's your job. That's why we're paying you. Otherwise, why am I paying taxes? You're not doing anything. And you're not listening.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you see that everywhere. I mean, you just see cities dying because capitalism just outsources jobs to other places. In Massachusetts, we have a history of mills and factories. I'm really close to Holyoke, which was like they call it Paper City. All the paper came from Holyoke, and Springfield, and all the factories there, and it's a common story because you see all these, like a lot of foreigners came to the U.S. Like my parents, and well, I'm a foreigner too. I was born in Europe, but I was raised here, so I feel pretty American for the most part. But it's my parents came here, and they all came here because there was opportunity, there was work. So all these, I live next to some mills in town, and like all these houses in these neighborhoods were just like they're in high demand because everybody was working there, and now they're just empty buildings, and the population goes down. And then you have places like Holyoke and Springfield where you have all these people now that were stuck in an area with no work. So basically, it ends up turning into Detroit. Holyoke's at one time was booming, and now you had the Polish immigrants, the Portuguese immigrants, you had Irish immigrants, all these people coming to work, and now they're and it's capitalism. And the thing is that like we love to point fingers because it's like the free market people love to blame government, the government loves to blame corporations, and it's just like like you said, it's neither. It's neither one or the other. Like they have the money. They just have to stop recklessly spending it on, like you said, like, Hollenberg getting non-bid contracts in Iraq, and KBR and all these other, Blackwater, doing jobs that the military usually does. Why do we need a private contractor that won't take responsibility if they fuck up anyways? Because they don't represent the U.S. government, So
because it's in their contracts that they're not. They have specific things written into contracts, and they're under specific government contracts that makes it so they're not liable for what they do. It's very like, I was just following orders. And that's what everybody says today. And it drives me crazy because when you look at, like you said, Halliburton gets all the money. These big military contractors or these big contractors get these huge, all of the business, where there's a company called Oshkosh Truck in Wisconsin, which... Full disclosure, I have a lot of family that work there. And I also have a lot of family who were laid off last year and over the course of the last year because the government started cutting all the funding to their government contracts. And what they were building there were ambulances and fire trucks and construction equipment. They weren't building tanks. They were building things that we needed to rebuild this. And what it does is the larger contractors undercut the little guys, and Oshkosh Truck becomes the little guy. And then you have 1,000 people out of work. That's 1,000 families that just lost a good, solid paying job with good benefits and continuous work because somebody in Washington and somebody in Madison decided that their buddy who has a much bigger firm gets to have it.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous because they're not cutting this. They're cutting jobs everywhere. You'll see it. It's usually these construction vehicles and things like that. But they'll pay for planes that don't work. We're paying billions of dollars in equipment that isn't even going to be made. That we don't want. And yet you're going to tell me that you can't fix a road. You can't. 1 in 8 bridges that are in this country are structurally deficient. Structurally deficient. 1 in 8.
So that's scary. Like, I know a lot of people that when they're on bridges are afraid. Like, they should be because.
You should.
Yeah.
I recently, the first leg of Build was, I took a road trip, as I was telling you earlier, from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., because, I decided I needed to be a little closer. I need to keep an eye on these people, is what happened. I couldn't keep an eye on them from Los Angeles, so I decided to move to D.C. and get into the thick of it here. And on that road trip, it was pretty amazing to see really brilliant construction. You go to some place like Louisiana and you see that entire roadways are elevated hundreds of feet off the ground, and they circumvent areas and they get people around, and they're kind of brilliant. And clearly somebody somewhere is doing a really good job at keeping things together and making sure these things don't fall apart when people are on them. And obviously, I'm not saying Louisiana, of all things, is perfect when it comes to infrastructure. We have the levee situation, obviously not in everything. But when you look at something like that, and then you look at streets even here in Washington, D.C., where we're in the nation's capital, and I'm 3 miles from the White House, and you have huge, dangerous potholes, and you have streets that are cracked, and you come across these neighborhoods or like an entire block where it's really dangerous. It causes damage to people's cars. It causes accidents. It's not safe. Don't tell me you don't know how to fix it. They can build suspended roadways for 150, 200 miles in this country. Don't tell me you don't have a decent way to fix a pothole and pave a road. It's ridiculous. And it creates jobs. And that's what really irritates me, because we have an amazing, the biggest thing about Build that I want to find, much more than just complaining and figuring out who's responsible, is really getting people to start thinking about how this is a job creator, and the U.S. government could use this situation and this issue as a way to rebuild America. And I'm sick of them saying and running on it as we go into midterm elections. Every single politician is going to sit there and say, we're rebuilding America. We're rebuilding America. They don't build anything. They're not tell me what you're going to build. Tell me what jobs you're going to create. Because those are good jobs. Like, those were good jobs when I was growing up. That was the thing when somebody got out of high school and they were like, I'm going to go work road construction for a couple of years. It was a good job. You learned a trade. You could support your family. And then, then you figured out what you wanted to do with your life. Or you said, hey, this is awesome. This is what I'm going to do. And those jobs just aren't there anymore. And the opportunities aren't. And then they sit and turn the tables back and go, well, it's because you guys are all, you look at a place where I grew up, in these small towns in central Wisconsin, and the biggest problem now is heroin and meth.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
It's like everywhere. And I'm like, you know why? Because when you talk to them, when you go there and you talk to these people, the reason that this is so prevalent is because everyone is disillusioned, because there's no jobs. They got out of high school, and unless you are going to college to become a doctor or a lawyer, and like, well, you should go to college. Well, for what? I think we've pretty much ascertained that it's overpriced, and the education is not worth money, and it's not going to help you get ahead. And now you're taking away the opportunities, like these factories and road construction and all of this. You're taking away state jobs. They demonize state jobs in places like Wisconsin, all for political reasons. Political reasons that cause 1 in 8 bridges to be structurally deficient, that cause like nobody having any kind of decent public transportation. That's not okay to me.
Yeah, we have tanks. I know people in the military that will tell you that we have tanks that are just sitting there with dust on, we don't use, and then we'll get new ones the next year, and then you just have more tanks just laying around there, thousands of tanks just sitting there doing nothing, and then they'll probably just end up selling them to some country that we'll end up going to war with in another 5 years, and they'll make money twice because they'll sell the tank, and then they'll make money making more tanks when they go to war. So it just
one of the your viewers, if you're listening, I highly suggest Googling this. The United States is one of the largest arms dealers in the world. We sell more guns and military equipment, high grade, not just, hey, we sell a couple of guns. We sell tanks, we sell missiles, we sell rocket launchers. We are Lord of War. It's kind of gross. And there's this thing, I'm like, okay, if that's what we're doing and we're doing it for a profit, because if you look at the information on what's come out about all of the dealings with the US government selling arms, there's a lot of profit in it. Where are those profits? If it's so great and we need the money, and that's the answer, which is what a politician will tell you. It's like, well, it makes money and we need money. Well, then why not take that money you have doing these pretty nefarious things, to use my favorite word, to say, hey, guess what? We just made $500 million selling tanks to some small country and rocket launchers to a bunch of rebels. Here, have a new road. But they don't. They don't give back the money. They're hoarding money and spending it on themselves. And I think there's probably going to be, I hope there will be, a really serious investigation into that and to the spending habits and fiscal responsibility of our current, former, and future elected officials in government. I think we need to have a serious investigation into that. And I think we as Americans deserve it. And I don't think and that's the thing. I've had politicians that I've called and I've requested information about this. I'm like, how are we really spending this money? Because it seems like if you get a lot of money in and you don't put a lot of money out into these things, so I'd like to know where that money's coming from. And they just tell you like, oh, well, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it. And I'm like, well, because you don't say anything. Because you don't answer a question. I mean, there's laws in private industry that if you're embezzling money, you have to show. That's part of I have to show the IRS how I spent, where my money comes from. And if I want a deal on my taxes or I want to be able to have any kind of tax breaks, I have to tell them exactly what I spent my money on. Exactly, down to the dollar, down to the cent, to the cup of coffee, to the thing of paper. I have to prove to them. And they don't have to do that with us. And that, quite frankly, just pisses me off.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I do it too, because I'm like, what? I'm from Wisconsin. We're fighty that way. We don't it's like I ask this simple question and then people get defensive and get all like, well, you just don't understand things. I'm like, that was not the right thing to say. Because now you riled me up. And I hope more people get riled up.
Yeah. Well, you look at like just the big dig. Like they end up spending, I think, originally was like $2.8 billion, I think was estimated. And then they end up, I think Boston Globe wrote an article about, I think the total ended up being like 22 billion after it was done. That's like over 190% more than what they estimated. And it was a crappy job. Then they had to like fix lights, which end up being like another $14 million and all. And it's just like, this is like, the money is, the numbers are so big, it almost seems like Monopoly money. Like it's not real, like billions and trillions. And it's just like, to us, it's like, we'll never make 1% of that money ever in our lifetime. And these people are just throwing this money away like it's nothing. And it's just like, where the fuck is this money going? Like when there's that much money in circulation, there should be some accountability for it. And people should know what's going on. And people should be accountable. Nobody gets locked up for this crap. I mean, I think the big dig, because it got so much publicity and because it was so obviously a fuck up, I think people did get arrested and people did get fined, but that's only for PR reasons. It was only because they had to, because somebody had to be accountable for it, because everybody in Massachusetts was pissed. And so it was just one of those things where it's just like, for the most part, they don't get in trouble, and it's just like, it's like just into 2008 collapse. I mean, how many people did any time for that, and the whole thing just, yeah, exactly, zero. So it just drives me crazy. It drives me crazy because to know that we give all this federal or this foreign aid to countries that I'll never go to, and for reasons we'll never know, and yet like I have to like swerve around potholes while going to work, hoping that I don't pop a tire, so I don't have to spend my check on buying new tires. Like that's real life. That's everyday people who have to go through these stresses and deal with these issues, and so it just. people, I know, like we said before, like it's not a very sexy issue, but when you look at like, people in Los Angeles, I mean, you lived in California, traffic there is fucking crazy.
For 7 years. And there are things about infrastructure in Los Angeles that will blow your mind. Right now, they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to connect downtown Los Angeles with Santa Monica and the beach. So from the farthest east side of Los Angeles to the farthest west side. This is a normal thing. You want to be able to get from the southern set of a city, any city, Manhattan even, like any large metropolitan area. Your biggest issue right away is, can I get north-south and can I get east-west? Well, east-west is almost impossible. A bus from the east side of Los Angeles, even just downtown to the beach, once you hit the coast, can take 2 hours. 2 hours. It is about 14 miles.
That's
2 hours.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's not. This is ridiculous. So they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this light rail system, which is awesome, by the way. However, there is already a train that goes from Hollywood, which could be connected to downtown, and there's a stretch of train that goes from Hollywood to the beach. You'll see when you drive through LA, you'll see a lot of these like stairs that go down, and you'll see these things. You're like, what are those? Those are where subway stations were going to be, and they were built. However, that stretch that they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars building, they won't open because it goes through Beverly Hills. Fun fact, the city of Beverly Hills, after it was built, said, we will not allow it, and got the power to close it. So there's an entire working subway system that goes under Beverly Hills out to the beach that connects east-west of the city that cannot be used because a bunch of people in Beverly Hills stood up, and you can check it. It's on record. If you go, you can do public record searches, and you can actually find like the city council meetings where people were talking about how poor people will get off the train in Beverly Hills, and so we don't want it there. And they managed to crush and waste hundreds of millions of dollars. So now we're spending even more money in Los Angeles to connect something that's already connected because some people decided that they're more important than the rest of the city because we don't want people dirtying our lawns.
That's crazy.
Poor people.
Well, we spend I think per year, like Europe spends, I think 5% on building roads and bridges and stuff like that, and then China spends like 9% on infrastructure, and I think the U.S. It was like the statistic they spend like 2%, which is and it's crazy, and it's just one of those things where like I said, it's one of those issues that I'm glad you're putting attention on because it's something that like we drive every day, we go to work, we don't really think about how the money that we're spending other places recklessly, and the fact that like it's an issue that we've almost accepted. Like we've accepted that, especially in New England, like after the winters, that our roads are going to be really crappy for a while before they start paving anything, and that you have to swerve around like a race car driver just to get around these potholes and stuff. And it just and everybody knows somebody who pops a tire, bends a rim, and like I said, that's money that's coming out of these are people who are going to 9-to-5 jobs that have to deal with like everyday issues and everyday stresses, and the last thing they need to do is worry about popping a tire because they didn't see it and then having to replace the tire, or getting late to work and getting in trouble, so.
And that's the thing where I think they forget that it isn't about the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's about understanding, and politicians need, this is, as midterm elections come up, I encourage everyone, if you have someone who is running in a midterm election this year, really do your research on them. And if you've never voted before, I suggest you get out and you get registered to vote. If nothing else, to just not vote for that guy. I don't care if we need to have more people saying no, even if it's to write in none of the above. I would love to see a whole bunch of people just say, look, I did my research and none of you are qualified for this job. So next round of candidates, none of the above. And watch them say that on the TV, say that on television, and say the polls were, and then surprising, 10% of voters voted none of the above. New voters who've never voted before. That is one thing that, I think we need to be really, really much more involved in. And it's sort of this, I think our generation, I hate to say that, but honestly, when I look around Capitol Hill, I see a bunch of people over 50 who have no idea what it's like to be coming up now. They think it's like when they were. That's why they're always telling you, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, kiddos. You just got to work harder. And like, work harder where?
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's a lot more people than there are jobs, and you need like two incomes to even support yourself today anyways. Like you were saying, like growing up in Wisconsin, I'm sure it was similar to like in the environment where I grew up, where people could get a construction job or a factory job and they could make a living. You could support a family, you could have a stay-at-home mom, and you could have be a middle-class family, where today it's like you need two incomes to be broke. And that's the thing. Like, no, I've said this recently I was talking to some friends, and I was like, nobody who works 40 hours a week should be broke. I'm like, nobody should be barely struggling. Like, the way I look at it, if you wake up every single day, you go to a job, you should have enough money to survive, and if you work 40 hours a week, you should. I mean, you're investing 40 hours of your life every single week for this, this machine, this money-making machine. The least they can do is pay you enough to survive, and it's just, so the fact that, and this goes back to like the Walmart, debate that, that's getting really, that's really popular at the moment, and I'm like, dude, there's a difference between a minimum wage and living wage. And the thing is, prices of everything has consistently gone up, and the thing is that most of us are making more money, so they haven't equaled out. So I don't think, and it's hard for me to feel bad for, you look at Walmart and like a lot of these big box stores. They're some of the biggest they employ the most people in the U.S., and most of those people are on government help, with insurance and all this stuff. So so
because they have to be. In fact, Walmart encourages them to go out and get food stamps so they can go back to Walmart and spend their food stamps there. I mean, they don't want them. You don't want people to be self-sufficient. And this is one of the biggest frustrators. I guess I'm frustrated about a lot of things. I feel like everything's angering me these days. That's why I'm here. I have to somebody's got to be angry and ask the questions, I guess. Like, that's why we have people like you and Abby and all of us, and people ask me why
thanks.
I do.
You compared to me to Abby. Yeah, nice. One day. Well, hopefully. Yeah.
Well,
she's doing awesome. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm happy. Like, this whole environment. I remember I had James Corbett on not too long ago, and he was my very first guest, and then he came. I had him on again, just some. Whatever it was later, just to say thanks and just to have him back and catch up, and it was cool because like the whole alternative news world, I wasn't even meant to be a part of it. Like, it was more just like, these are topics that I think are interesting. I talk to my friends about them. I write music hitting on some of these topics. But like you said, it was more rewarding. Like, I'm sure like with Buzzsaw, it's a faster reward because you can just put it out quickly. It's out. You can talk about it as your opinions change or new information comes in. You can kind of put a new video out next week, and with your new ideas and stuff like that. So it's just more rewarding than writing a whole song and putting everything together, and then 6 months later you release it and you're like, wait, I don't even feel that way anymore. So it was just, it's cool because everybody in this alternative media, like, everybody supports each other for the most part. There definitely is, you see some of the Glenn Greenwald haters and the Greenwald lovers, and it's just like, dude, let's just focus on the things we all agree on: corruption and greed, and that something needs to change. So but it's cool because everybody, people like you, the reason why you are upset, that same passion is what drives you to actually do something instead of just complaining. So I think that's awesome.
And it's like you said, I'm kind of was in the same boat where you said, like, as a musician, I think that you look at most of us who are in there, and at one point or another, we were artists, and you're seeing a lot more artists, which I always think of as we're storytellers. Whether, we're looking at something from many different angles, and it isn't just making stuff up, which somebody's like, oh, well, you made stuff up for a living, now you're going to do news. And I was like, I didn't make stuff up. I was commenting, I was questioning the human condition as a writer and as a filmmaker, and that's what I used to do. And as an artist and performer, I always was looking for a way to best express a story and start a dialogue. But like you said, when you get so frustrated that I would sit there and I would write scripts and I would have these movies and I would sit down and talk to people and they'd be like, it's a really great movie and it's so great and we'd love to do it and everybody's interested. But it's a little political and could you change this to this? And suddenly it's like you take something that's, you know, a really hard-hitting, heartful story that I feel like people need to talk about, and people won't even do it because they're like, can we change it to like, you know, can we switch the entire meaning of your movie around to make it more marketable? No. And after you put 2-3 years into it, you finally get angry. So I can't do my job as an artist. I can't do what I truly, passionately love to do. And I had to change how I was a storyteller and how I was doing my work and living my life, because I watched everybody becoming scared and becoming this sheep and just saying like, people might be upset if you talk about Iraq or you talk about that. I had a script at one point about how the US government is spending millions on tomahawks and not giving our guys who are in the front line proper equipment and not taking care of them when they get home. To me, that was like and they were sitting there and I got a lot of criticism from people saying, nah, it seems a little liberal and it seems a little government bashing. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm trying to point out that we're putting guys, our men and women's lives at risk. These people who really are risking, for whatever reason, whatever their political or religious or whatever view, they've put themselves in that position, and we can't even give them a bulletproof vest except we tell them to go somewhere to get shot at. And you want me to think that your morals and ethics are on straight? They're not. And everyone in Washington, every one of them, needs to look in the mirror and really think about what their morals and ethics are doing, and if they really are following these Christian morals and ethics, because that's the thing, like good Christians. None of you are. None of you. The most basic of things that I was taught through all of that religious training, while I'm not religious, it's like I don't belong to I don't belong to one side or the other. I'm also the same about, that. I said it on Buzzsaw a few times. I was like, look, I believe in the possibility of aliens and magic. That's about as far as I will go to say what I can believe, because I can't, like you said, I can't say for sure anything. Well, but I know that I'm open to it and I want to learn more, and I know that these are good. Like, this is the thing, every religion has a very specific common set of beliefs. Be good to each other. Respect each other. Don't do bad shit, or bad shit will happen to you.
I believe that's a direct quote from the Bible.
It is. It's Mark or Matt. One of those. It's in there somewhere. I mean, everybody else gets to make up Bible quotes and say that the Bible says things that it doesn't say. It's don't bad shit happens to you. And that's what I say. Like, if you don't want people to think you're nefarious, don't act nefarious. Don't do things like that. Believe in the truth of it. We should all be treating each other well. You shouldn't justify killing another person. You shouldn't justify taking something away. You shouldn't justify stealing and lying for any reason. And if you do it, even if you say it was for the greater good, you should show some remorse. You should say, this isn't right. I did it for this reason, and I did it because I had to, or I felt it. At least stand up for your beliefs. Don't stand behind, this. And then while you rip apart the Constitution in the name of the Constitution, I'm like, I think you have a different Constitution than I do, if you think that that's okay. It's all very specific. I mean, the Constitution, the Ten Commandments, whatever it is, whatever your religious text, it all says the same thing. We need to respect each other. Everyone's allowed to have an opinion, and you don't get to treat other people like garbage and get away with it.
Well, I think people pick and choose what part of religions and rules and laws that they, whatever helps their argument. You get Christians that have tattoos, and in the Bible, it pretty obviously says that hey, no, markings, on your body. So just like a lot of things like that make absolutely no sense. So just like you pick and choose. It's like, well, if I find the part, so if I find the part that says something about gays, then I'll go with that. Forget the tattoo part, or like shellfish. I believe it says something about you can't eat shellfish or something like that. Or,
there's a million things, and it's everybody cherry picks what suits them instead of looking at it as a whole. And it's the same thing with law and constitution. They cherry pick what works for them at the expense of other people. And I would be interested to find out pharmaceuticals, how many sleeping pills are sold in the District of Columbia, because I don't know how they sleep at night. I don't know how you sleep at night, taking millions of election money and pocketing it and taking money from people and saying you're a public servant. Sorry, I get really mad.
Well,
saying you're a public servant, which is a noble place. It's a noble job. If someone says, I want to take this time out of my personal life and going after my personal wealth and my personal things, and I'm going to serve my fellow citizens. And when you use that and you corrupt it, as most of our politicians now are doing, where you're turning it into a money-making machine, where you're turning it into your own little personal piggy bank and your own personal little thing, it is deplorable. This isn't, that's why it's like, how dare it when people are sitting there saying all this stuff and trying to say like, oh, you're not a patriot, you're this. I'm like, no, I am exactly what a patriot is supposed to be. People like you and I and everybody questioning, because that's what this country was built on. I get angry. I'm like, am I the only person who was awake in history class? Because I think if you're on Capitol Hill, you should know your history. You should know your history. You should know what this country was built on. Not because Jesus said he doesn't like gays, or Jesus said he doesn't like this, so we're going to go after this. And that's what I'm going to use the government for my own personal. It's not okay.
Yeah. And the whole... Well, no, it's all right. They and the thing is too, they spend most of their time just getting money anyways, like just basically campaign money. So it's one of those things. By the time you get elected, you're basically already thinking about how am I going to get money for the next run, and so they spend 99% of their time just trying to get money and call people, and then a lot of the language in bills, they basically just end up being told by, or at least I think written. Some of the rough drafts are written by lobbyists, and then they just repeat the same crap the lobbyist tells them to repeat, and it's just like a lot of these people, they don't read the language in these bills. They don't even know what they're jumping on board with.
Terrible. Another thing I encourage people to do: go look up just reading everything from defense spending bills to the Healthcare Act. It is the most. Get some English majors. You can't tell me you can't get some English majors in there to tell you how to write a sentence, because they're so poorly written, they're incomprehensible, and when you get to the end of them, you can have an entire paragraph and it doesn't actually say anything.
Yeah, well,
language. It really doesn't say anything.
Well, I believe it.
If you gave it to an English professor to go through, I'd love to see an English professor and a language expert to go through some of these bills and literally with a red pen be like, that's not even a sentence. That doesn't say what you think it says. And I think that's the huge problem, is that you have thousands of pages of legislature that no one reads, not even the people voting on it. And, I'm like, that's what happens in Hollywood a lot too. They don't read the script before they sign off on it. They just read the summary of the script, and then they deal with fixing it later. And unfortunately, you can do that with a movie.
Yeah.
Because at some point, you're just going to sit down before you get started and go, okay, well, we'll fix this. You can't do that with legislation. You can't.
Yeah.
And most of it's just garbage.
Well, they make the language so hard to understand for the average person. The average person can't understand it. So we have to just take these politicians' word for it that they're telling us basically what it means. I mean, most of us don't have time to read this shit. And like you said, they make the language just so complex and in ways that even a somewhat intelligent person would have a hard time knowing what the fuck it means. We sign contracts for, state jobs and stuff like that, and you read them, and like a lot of times I'm telling my parents like, I read it over. I know what the fuck it says. And I have, like, most of the time I'm reading, I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm like, I'll figure it out when I get there, but it's just like you're reading shit and you just know that, like, I'm like, you can't tell me there's not a easier simpler way of saying the same thing with less sentences and less words, and it's just like you feel like they're just trying to confuse you, and it's just, you know, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I feel like we need a better system. I mean, our electoral system is so useless and corrupt, like the voting system and how, I mean, you have not even half the people in this country actually vote. And yet this is what we're always told, like, well, we took a poll of 300 people who happened to be by their phone at 7 o'clock at night and were willing to talk to us. And that's the voice of the entire country. And Congress just keeps saying, well, this is what people want. Really? Is it? How do you know that? And we have no way for people to really voice their opinions. And you know what? It's you can't just throw a website up and make an app for it. Not everybody is in that kind of a situation, and not everyone should be forced to download an app in order, or tweet the president. Like, come on, we're better than this. We're grown-ups. It's not a game. You know, apps are for games. Sorry, they are. They're for games and making goofy pictures. Yeah. That's what apps are for. That's what that stuff is for, but it's turned into a joke. It's marketing.
Well, who does those polls anyways? I don't know anybody who's a part of any of these polls. Every time I see these polls, I'm like, I don't know anybody who's a part of this poll. I'm like, I know I wasn't. So it's like, where are you getting this information from?
Most of those, I can tell you actually. A lot of market research is done in one of two ways. One is online polls that people are paid to participate in. So when you see those things like make thousands of dollars from home by completing polls about products and other, well, they'll send people who are sitting there doing like 50 polls a day. So what you have is people, when you look at data, when market researchers compile data and analyze it to say 30% believe this, first of all, the questions are shaped in a way so that they're either confusing or they don't always mean what they say. And they won't just say, we asked this specific question and this is the answer. They'll reword the question to make the data work for them. So you have people who are online, the kind of people who have the time in their day to do online polls. I know I don't have time to do that all the time. Although I'll stop to do a goofy quiz on Facebook for 5 minutes. That's fine. Because I do want to know what Disney character I am. That would do that. But they're not going to do a, what's my political view? Like, you see that. It's a million quizzes for that. So you've got online polls, so people who will sit and do that for money. And your second is people who will answer the phone to an unknown number and then take 10 minutes out of their day to answer a series of very loaded political questions. And what they do is they normally call at times that are dinner time for most people, between like 4 and 7 p.m. So what we're talking about is people who are willing to get on the phone at dinner time for 10 minutes with a complete stranger to answer a bunch of random questions about politics. And then they do it 100 times, and they base 30 million people's views on 100 or 200 or even 1,000 people who are either sitting at their computer to make $1 or we're willing to talk to a random stranger on the phone about politics for 20 to 10 minutes. That's not how you find, I mean, that's just bad data management from somebody who used to work in marketing. I never used market research because I realized very quickly everything from TV ratings to that is shaped to suit the advertiser. And these polls, just like market research, are shaped to suit the person whose political agenda is trying to be pushed, which is whoever's paying for the poll.
Yeah.
The government's not doing the poll. If it was, hey, the government, U.S. government has decided to spend $10 million paying a research company to poll Americans in a more efficient way about their viewpoints so that we can be better educated as legislators. I keep pointing that way because they literally are that way, not in my microwave, but that way. You guys back there. That these guys, if someone said to me, look, we're going to spend this money, and we're going to spend this money so that the people of this country can have a better voice to their politicians, so that we as politicians have a much better, more educated understanding of real issues and how people truly feel, I would be all for it. But we don't. We have super PACs and we have political parties, and there's a lot of money in keeping all of us divided and not keeping us with a voice. So, we just have to keep yelling.
Yeah.
And on our feet and writing in none of the above when there's none of the above.
Yeah, I agree, because voting for the least of two evils, you're still voting for evil. So I definitely think that, one, I think that what Jesse Ventura said and take off which political party people are in on the ballots would be a great idea. And I think none of the above would be a great idea also. I think just, letting people know that, if you don't show up, then they just think you're busy. But at least if you put none of the above, you're letting people know you're angry. And so I just think that's a big part of it. So I just want to thank Tabetha for being with me today. I know that she got a crazy day going on, and she's doing some moving, and she has a dog that she's taking care of. So it just tons of crazy stuff. Life gets in the way, so it's no big deal. But
good things. It's a lot of craziness and a lot of doing that. But I'm excited to be in DC. It wasn't something I ever thought. I have to deal with winter again. That'll be fun. But my biggest reason for moving here and moving my life, because I did. I packed up everything and moved my life to Washington, D.C. because I knew that the only way I could truly do what I could do best and make the most difference is if I can get on a bus and I can be at the Capitol and I can knock on doors and I can, question these people in their faces and look them in the eye and ask them, why are you doing this? What's your reasoning? Give me a good reason. Tell me, let's talk about it. And, I'm here.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm looking forward to all your future projects. And actually, Sean, I talked to Sean not too long ago. He said probably in like a month or so we're going to schedule something. So I'm going to have him on. We'll probably talk about reptilians and whatever crazy stuff. Sean's a pretty interesting dude. So
that's Sean. It's the thing about the three of us. You've got Tyrel Ventura, obviously son of Jesse Ventura. So you've got this strong political background, and that he's watched how it works, and his father, the governor, is, man, what a guy. And you should, if you're not watching, if people aren't watching his show, you can see it's on Aura TV, on Hulu and YouTube, Off the Grid.
Yeah, awesome show.
He does an amazing thing. So you have Tyrel, who has that sort of background, and he's very, tough, truth, I want answers and that kind of thing. And Sean's, I call him very esoteric. He's willing to talk to people who you might think are a little off, but when you really look at what they're saying, you find this bit of truth, and you find a little bit of understanding of why, and you walk away with something that you didn't have. And then there's me. Dad's not anybody famous, but
well, I think you made a name for yourself on Buzzsaw. I think a lot of people I became familiar. I loved the show. I thought the show was awesome. I loved that you and Tyrel going through just basically the headlines and stuff like that. And I thought you guys complemented each other. And I think that it was cool because you brought what people like about podcasts, which is like a real conversation. You brought it to a show, a video show. So I like that.
Yeah. And, I'm a blue collar girl. I was raised in a small town of 1,200 people. I've had a job since I was 11 years old. Like, I've literally filed taxes since I was 11 years old. I've always had to work. I put myself through college. I've supported myself in blue collar jobs and all of that my entire life. I've never had anybody hand me anything. And not to say that Tyrel or Sean did at all. It's, I feel like I hope I represent people like myself who I grew up around, who maybe didn't have some opportunities that I did have, where I got to go to bigger cities and I got to interact with these people and I got opportunities to learn things. I wish everyone did. And I want a better life for people. It's kind of like I got out of that environment that's happening, like we were talking about, with no jobs and drugs and opportunity. I was able to get out of that, but I got out of it so I could make it better for people there. You shouldn't have to leave to have a better life. You know, I wish it had just been better there. I wish there had been more opportunities so I could have stayed living in the place where I was born. And I want to make it better for everybody. And I think my small town is like every other small town, and we're all going through all this stuff together. And, you know, don't let them, they're doing it to you. Like, you don't let them bring us down, and don't let them allow us to destroy ourselves.
Yeah. But it's cool. Yeah, but it's cool to have people like you, and you know, I was born on a farm in Portugal which had like no running water, and my parents were farmers, and like, you know, they had like, you know, the population was like 12 and like one goat, you know, and it was just you know, so and then we came to America, and my parents had it was the typical, like, you know, immigrant dream of like coming here with nothing. I remember when hearing the story from my parents, like my dad actually wanted to go back. He hated it so much because, I mean, it's hard to go to a country you speak no English, you write no English, you don't know shit, you're trying to find your way, and then he just wanted to go back to Europe, and my mom's like, we can't because we're broke, and now we have to stay. So she's like, we can't afford to go back. So that was really the main purpose, reason why we end up. And my parents came here ahead of time, and I stayed in Portugal with my aunt because they needed to like get their life together before I could go. So I mean, I was like 3, so to be away from your 3-year-old for a year, you know, to start a new life somewhere else, that's probably scary. You know, I don't have any kids, but I can just imagine, you know. So, but it's just like, those are the average people. At one time you could come to a country, start a life, work hard, and accomplish something. Now you work hard to be broke, and then that's why we spend all our fucking money on stupid shit, because we're just like trying to make ourselves happier, you know. It's like,
I could have $100 in the bank, and there are times when I'm like, I'm spending $70 on a video game. You know why? Because I just need a little bit of release from this craziness.
And that's okay. So, you know, that I think that's, you know, even though I talk a lot about materialism, I think that, you know, the thing is, especially with like the middle class, or the you know, whatever's the middle class now, because it's so small now, I don't even know what's a middle class. But the thing is that I think I do the same thing. Like, you work all weekend, and then you can't wait till Friday or Saturday to have a couple drinks, hang out with some friends, go buy something to make you feel better, and then Monday you have to do it all fucking over again, and you're miserable at work, and you're just looking forward to that weekend. So just like, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
This is the best part. They've spent decades telling us all the American dream is have all these things, have all the things that you deserve. Buy them on credit. It's okay. We'll let you pay it later. You guys should all have a house. Everyone should have a big screen TV. Everyone should have a brand new car. You deserve it. And then the minute everybody got it and things got tough for them, because let's remember, they could have stopped this. The banks could have stopped everything that happened, but they didn't. They decided that it was more, they were like, nah, now I want my money. So guess what? I'm going to turn the entire dialogue around on the American people. And that American dream that I sold you, that I told you you deserve, I'm going to tell you it's your fault. And I'm going to tell you you're greedy. And I'm going to tell you that it's all about you took it away from America. So
let's make
screw that. I mean, I hate to be like vulgar. I'm going to be a little Wisconsin vulgar. Screw them.
Yeah.
You do deserve it. You do deserve good things. You do deserve a decent place to live. You deserve decent roads. You deserve clean water that you can drink out of the tap without putting through a filter first. You deserve better than they're giving you. And what we need to do is start believing that in our hearts, that we deserve better than what they're giving us, and go tell them that. And get people out of office who aren't willing to be public servants and be there for us, because we all deserve better.
Yeah, and you just remind me of a quote that Dan Carlin said recently, and I've been hearing around, is they about, you know, the banks, they want to make profit private and make losses and socialize losses, and it's just, that's exactly what they did. They wanted when, you know, it's all about free market when they're making money, but once the shit hits the fan, then it's like, you know, we want handouts. But guess what? You know, if my company goes out of business, nobody helps me out. You know, we've struggled the last couple of years. We've had to cut corners and balance our budget and all that stuff. So I mean, that's what all contractors should do, and all companies should do. And just because you're too big to fail, you know, doesn't mean that DC, like, we should feel bad for the CEOs. But the thing is too, like, a lot of us don't know much about, they scare us with the idea of, well, if you don't bail them out, the whole economy is going to collapse and blah blah blah, and then who knows if they're just feeding us bullshit to try to scare us into giving them the money or whatever. So it's hard. It's a lot of shit to figure out. But so the Build project, is that going to turn into a documentary, or how can people get a hold of you? How can people help? How can people, before I let you go, I want to make sure we button up all that up.
I'll be doing a second round of crowdfunding for the next phase of the thing. The first one was under Build campaign. It'll be up. It should be up by the time this is posted. It's going to be under IndieGoGo, and it'll be Build Campaign 2. I will post it on my Facebook page and on Twitter at Decoy Tabetha, if you can look me up. It is going to be mainly to fund going out and actually collecting interviews for the documentary, and that I'm going to be doing both a book and a documentary, both. So we have 2 ways. And then eventually, as I talked about on Abby's show down the road, as those become bigger, I want to have a website, and I want to have these places where people can go and find out if there's a pothole, if there's a dangerous situation, if you want something better. I want a place where people can go and find out exactly who to call, and then call them and give them the tools to be able to fight back at the system and get what they deserve. And so, yeah, we'll be doing a second round. It'll be up by the time everybody reads this, and on IndieGoGo, called Build. And that's lots of other things. I can't talk about everything yet, but stay tuned.
Yeah,
lots of things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely have you back on, and hopefully you'll come on, and we'll talk more about the build process as we get closer to, I'm sure the release of the documentary and the film, and I'm sure other projects and stuff. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk to you about. So we'll definitely stay in contact, and thanks again for taking your busy day to take some time to be with us, and I really appreciate it. It's an important topic. I think it's a topic that affects us all, and doesn't really get any, like I said before, it's not a really sexy topic, but like you said, it affects costs of things. It affects, where our extra money goes to, instead of going to buying video games where we have to buy tires and rims and it's stuff like that. So it affects so much of our lives. So it's a wicked important topic. I just now I'm from Massachusetts. Wicked, I said wicked. But so it's an
important topic, and hopefully if we whatever we have to do, bust down doors, make it sexy, put it to music, put a cat video in it. I don't care what it takes. Anything.
Cats will do it. Cats will do it. We need construction working cats.
Totally.
Thanks, Tabetha.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the listeners out there, viewers, for taking the time to listen to me ramble on about roads are important, and please contact me with anything you have. I'm looking for stories as well for the documentary about how infrastructure and how these things affect people. So awesome. I'm excited to hear from everybody. Yeah. Thank you so much. And anytime
yeah,
you want
definitely. On our for my viewers that don't know, we do we put up the episodes on YouTube, also on our YouTube channel. We usually do anybody who calls in video via video, we do a split screen, and underneath of all our video episodes on YouTube, in the descriptions we'll have links to all her, Tabetha, her Twitter page, her Facebook page, and I'll also find the IndieGoGo thing and put a link to that. So if anybody's looking to get a hold of her or contact her, you can go there and then check it out. So thanks again, Tabetha. Good luck with the moving today, and keep in touch.
Thank you, you too. Have an awesome day, everyone. Much love.